A confused young man looked at his parent, that's French Creole for Godfather, and asked, "What am I? Who am I? Who are my ancestors' kin? I'm fair, my brother's brown, and my sister's of olive skin. My mama says Creole. What is that? Am I supposed to know?"
I guess just it's just a big easy. I mean, the Creole life is just laid back. Just take it one day at a time.
What is your definition of Creole?
How do I define Creole?
A lot of different things. It's culturally the mixture of food, music, and I guess ethnic origin.
Beautiful people, the beautiful food, the music. It's kind of the, I don't know, mixing of everything here. It's kind of like gumbo. You know, you put a lot of different things in the pot, and you get a beautiful end result. And that's, I guess, what the Creole culture in New Orleans, I guess, would mean to me.
I'm not so sure if I'm right, but what they say in New Orleans is because of a mixture of Caribbean folks with white folks, which through the evolution became black and white, which is a bit of a coloration situation.
She's saying, what is the Creole in our own words, grandmother? What would your answer be? What would you say about that?
I'd say human beings.
She said human beings. I don't know. Well, you know, the definition of Creole, I think, is the Spanish, the Native Americans, and the black race, I think, is all considered Creoles. Now, they're different from Cajuns. I don't know what they define as a Cajun, but Creoles is like a melting pot of what New Orleans, the natives of New Orleans consist of. It's just a combination of all the different races that, you know, especially with those three entities in it.
Indigenous in the sense that we're not Native Americans, but we are, I guess, that we started, basically our culture started here. Although our ancestry goes back to, I guess, the beginning of time. What else can I say except that I'm originally from Chicago, although I was born in Louisiana, and my parents are from Louisiana. I would consider myself to be a Louisiana French Creole.
Man, he has a little bit of this and a little bit of that. So I think what makes Creole is that you have to recognize that you are part of many ethnicities. You're not totally African American. You're not totally French. You're not totally Spanish. You're a combination of everything. And I think recognizing that diversity is unique because you say, this is who I am. You accept me the way I am. I have no control over the fact that I have 7 ethnic groups in 3 generations.
We are mixture of Caucasians and Africans that's in the family, both on mother's side of the family, on my dad's side of the family. So you might say we are thoroughbred Creoles. One thing I can remember, my mother on the telephone, when she talked to her sisters, they always spoke in French. And of course, whenever they were talking about me, I knew because they couldn't say Lord in French. So I always got a kick out of that.
Honey, we went from dark brown to blue-eyed blondes. My sister was a platinum blonde as a child, a blonde with blue eyes. And I have first cousins that are dark brown skin. I had one uncle that was brown and 3 uncles that were fair. One had blue eyes. Naturally, the brown one was teased and talked about as a kid because they do that in their own families. They call them the black sheep of the family and things like that.
Many of the children of darker complexions felt inferior. These children never fully were able to enjoy being children. They were so busy worrying about what they looked like. If you were brown, but you had nice hair, you know, if your hair would move, if you had good hair, well then you were with that crowd with the light skin, who may not have had nice hair, but they had the fair skin. So there was a lot of categorizing, and the children who felt inferior, they carried this forever.
Remember, the Creole word to some people, they get really upset over it. One of my coworkers, I mentioned that word just a few weeks ago, and he told me, he said, that's when you want to be white and you don't want to be black. But to some extent, we are in the middle. We don't want to be uppity. All I want to do is live my life and go on.
My daddy was a very independent person. He loved business. He loved dairy farming. He loved cows. My father received a tax bill for $600 on the farm and the cattle and whatever. He met with Judge Adams and protested, and he said since he did not have schools for his children, he didn't see why he had to pay it. He said if he had to pay it, he would send his children to that school, that white school right down the highway. Judge Adams told him for $3,000, I'll have all y'all records changed and everybody will be white. And he told him go to hell, and that was it.
Originally in New Orleans, the term Creole referred to African slaves that were born in the New World into existing slave families. Eventually, the descendants of the French and Spanish colonial population of the city adopted the term in order to distinguish themselves from the newly arriving Europeans. These Creoles led extremely social lives that were mainly centered around family, and they generally did not stray away from the Creole communities in which they were raised.
The youth besieged him. Tell me, why are we so many colors? What does Creole really mean? Who can I call my brothers? Am I black or white? I do not understand. What is my true birthright?
When the Americans bought New Orleans, one of the things that was most astonishing to them, there weren't just white people and black slaves. There were these people who were of African or partially African descent who were well educated, who were sophisticated, who were well dressed, who were rich, some of them, and who had their own very important social life. That was part of the disconnect for Americans coming here, to see black people in positions of success.
Yeah, they were very surprised at the openness of the black population, free and slaves.
There were free black people throughout the United States, but in most of the other states, particularly in the South, they were not that much better off than slaves, other than they could not be sold away. But basically their life was quite constrained. In New Orleans, because of the French and the Spanish background, the free people of color had almost all the rights of whites.
Many of them had the skills which were very critical for developing a new society in the early 19th century.
They had many, many professions. There were plantation owners, There were men who dealt in real estate. By the time of the Civil War, about 2/5 of all the land in New Orleans was owned by people who were of mixed race or blacks.
I believe that these people who became people of means, they were able to interact with the other cultures because of what they had, because they were looked upon prior to the Americans coming in to be of the same stature, probably more of a thing with money than with race.
At one point, free people of color had a higher literacy rate than the general population of whites.
There was a lot of mixed socializing, whether it was dancing, gambling, going to a cockfight, going to horse races, listening to music, just spending the weekend drinking, whatever, socializing, partying. There was a lot of mixing.
There were definitely a means of transferring African civilization.
The island of Haiti, or as the Spanish called it, Hispaniola, was among the first places for European contact with the New World. By Columbus's second voyage, he had established an outpost there.
Imagine two cultures coming into contact with each other. The difficulties there must have been for both sides to comprehend the other culture. Artistically, the Indians were masters. When you look at the talents of Native Americans throughout the New World, you look at their sensitivity towards the visual arts, toward music. It's part of their legacy from pre-Columbian times.
The introduction of diseases and a series of armed conflicts caused the Taino and Arawak Indians to be eradicated in a large part by the middle or third quarter of the 16th century.
The experience of the Spaniards and the Indians in Santo Domingo set a theme that was going to be repeated over and over again throughout the Americas.